Where's the driver? Where's the driver? Is there anybody in there?
The driver was 33-year-old investigative journalist Michael Hastings.
Finally tonight, some sad news from the world of journalism. Award-winning reporter Michael Hastings has passed away. We learned last night that Hastings was killed on Tuesday in a car accident in Los Angeles. Hastings was a reporter at BuzzFeed and a contributing editor at Rolling Stone. He had appeared on RT numerous times to discuss the war reporting. Hastings is probably best known for his 2010 Rolling Stone article on General Stanley McChrystal. In the article, McChrystal and his top aides were critical of President Obama and his handling of the Afghanistan war. After that was published, McChrystal stepped down. Journalist Michael Hastings was 33 years old.
The president having accepted McChrystal's forced resignation because of the general's scornful remarks about the commander-in-chief and other administration officials in the now infamous Rolling Stone magazine interview. At a Rose Garden News event, the president saying General McChrystal's explosive comments and those of his top aides left the general unfit to lead.
Today I accepted General Stanley McChrystal's resignation as commander of the International Security Assistance Force in Afghanistan. I did so with considerable regret, but also with certainty that it is the right thing for our mission in Afghanistan, for our military, and for our country. The war is bigger than any one man or woman, whether a private or a president. And as difficult as it is to lose General McChrystal, I believe that it is the right decision for our national security. The conduct represented in the recently published article does not meet the standard that should be set by a commanding general.
As you can see, Michael Hastings wasn't your run-of-the-mill mainstream media establishment journalist. His reporting forced the resignation of General Stanley McChrystal. He was a vocal critic of the American spy state and wrote articles such as "Why Democrats Love to Spy on Americans." Speaking truth to power had become a way of life for Michael Hastings.
I think there is a distinct lack of skepticism. I think when you have an institution like the Pentagon, every general since 2001 has said we are either winning or have won in Afghanistan, except for one moment when General McChrystal decided in 2009 to say, oh, actually, we're not winning. And the only reason he said that was because he wanted more troops, right? But immediately after he said that, then everyone else, then Petraeus and every other general has followed him, said, we're winning, we're winning, we're winning. When it's clear that's not the case. So one has to say, why are we giving the Pentagon so much credibility to make these statements? Why hasn't the Pentagon press corps stood up and said, or a member of it, and say, you've said in 2002, 2003, 2004 that we've won this war. You've said in 2006, 2007, 2008 that we've won this war. Why are you now saying we have to fight there for 10 more years? And that is literally what General McChrystal just said.
I think you lay it out, though, pretty well in your book. And here we have a little passage that I'm going to write. And this is where you're talking about this media military-industrial complex. And the same, idea that we think about Washington and Wall Street being too close. Everyone is too close to power, and they're too scared. And so this was the reaction that you were getting from people after the original Rolling Stone piece came out, after you basically got a general fired. And what happened, it says, it demonstrated just how tenuous one's position could be. Careers could flame out overnight. The political media class saw the story as a threat to their schmoozy relationship, their very existence and social life. If you can't get wasted with a journalist who's writing a profile of you and piss all over the president who appointed you, what's the world coming to?
Yeah, that didn't make me too many friends in the, in the Washington, D.C.
Were you shocked by that response that you wrote what was an honest account? You didn't try to protect McChrystal or the aides that surrounded him. and then you got really crazy backlash.
I was shocked that I was shocked that President Obama fired him. I think that was very significant. I did not realize how bad the relationship between the president and the Pentagon had been, and I think what that meant was this was President Obama reasserting his control over the Pentagon. So yeah, I was shocked on that front. I was also surprised by the media's response, and it was a portion of the media, the Pentagon media, the national security media, and at first I was sort of confused about it, and I was like, well, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They don't really mean what they're saying about the story. But then as the months and months went on, I'd get along fine with different government officials for the most part, but there was still this really intense, hatred among a few of my colleagues. And I think, and the sort of insight I had, or what I kind of realized, was that the Pentagon press corps is just that. They're the press corps for the Pentagon. And I know that sounds overstated.
Well, they serve the Pentagon, and they're scared to hurt the feelings, I guess you could say, or step on the toes of the Pentagon.
Right. Look, there was a Pentagon spokesperson, a guy by the name of Jeff Morrell. And now you knew Jeff Morrell was telling the truth because he'd start to sweat, because he'd be lying all the other time. And I listened to a radio show, and it's like Jeff Morrell and reporter from X mainstream publication, who I'm not going to mention, and they sound the same, and they're complimenting each other and saying what great jobs they're both doing.
Well, Michael Hastings, in your BuzzFeed article, The Sins of General David Petraeus, you argue that Petraeus was a master of deception. Do you think he should have resigned?
I think there's many other reasons Petraeus should have resigned besides who he's sleeping with that's not his wife. But I just want to make a point here. That the larger point that I've been making is that essentially the media has played a role in protecting David Petraeus and promoting David Petraeus and mythologizing David Petraeus. And we saw it here tonight. General Kimmett, who was a spokesperson in Baghdad, who was a roommate of Petraeus, who was involved in one of the biggest debacles in recent foreign policy history, is on TV, defending David Petraeus without actually addressing the real problems with David Petraeus' record. And those are the fact that he manipulated the White House into escalating into Afghanistan. He ran a campaign in Iraq that was brutally savage, included arming the worst of the worst, Shiite death squads, Sunni militiamen, and then you go back to the training of the Iraqi army program that also had similar problems. So for me, all the while he's going around the country talking about honor and integrity. So for me, the questions of honor and integrity, I was raising those earlier. A number of other journalists who were actually covering David Petraeus were raising those concerns. You might not get that from someone like Barbara Starr at CNN, who is essentially a spokesperson for the Pentagon in many ways. So I think I just want to step back and to have my piece, because just even the way the scandal is being covered is so different than how usual sex scandals are being covered, where they hammer the guy mercilessly. Now everyone's saying, oh my God, he was he just went to the CIA. How could he be, he was susceptible to being seduced by this woman. Give me a break. Petraeus now has all his allies coming out to defend him, where Paula Broadwell is there yet again. Where are her protectors?
Okay, well, but Barbara's not a spokesperson for him, obviously. But let's move to Lieutenant Colonel.
Not too obviously. I followed her coverage pretty closely, as she's covered my work before too.
Well, just because she's written naughty things about you doesn't make her a spokesperson.
No, what makes her a spokesperson is repeating without question a lot of Pentagon claims.
I never saw George W. Bush give a speech where he conceded that, these decisions aren't that simple.
Speechwriters. He had better speechwriters at this time. I don't know what happened to the first two speechwriters, but certainly they weren't working on this speech. I mean, this speech, in my view, if you compare this speech to his the speech he gave in Cairo in 2009 or his Nobel Prize speech, you see a kind of almost total rejection of the civil rights tradition that President Obama supposedly came out of, a total rejection of any kind of these ideas of a kind of peaceful transition, of a kind of trying to work with the fellow people in different nations, and just an embrace of total militarism. And the reason I say this is because that speech to me was essentially agreeing with President Bush and Vice President Cheney that we're in this sort of neoconservative paradigm, that we're at war with a jihadist threat that actually is not a nuisance, but the most important threat we're facing today. It is in my view, a complete rejection of what John Kerry said, and I said an embrace of militarism.
He's talking about.
He says that multiple things.
Right. No, I agree. I agree. It's complex, but I mean,
But no, it's not only complex, but he enshrines. Look, the two key things that I took away from that speech is that Obama has enshrined the two most radical principles of the Bush doctrine. The first is, he sort of got rid of torture and sort of got rid of extraordinary rendition, but enshrines targeted assassination. At the same time, he doesn't apologize for. He won't apologize for the scandal in Benghazi. He won't apologize for the IRS is a few bad apples, and he says no, the AP and spying on journalists is okay. So he enshrines killing people and spying on journalists as the two major tenets of his national security state. I think this is outrageous.
I don't agree with what Michael said. I'm just to be blunt about it.
Well, I read your piece. It was essentially, talking points from the White House. It was stenography, and look, I dig your work, and I've read it in the past as a colleague, but I was not impressed with the piece that we were sent around by the producers.
Well, let's let Perry explain what he said before we say we're not impressed with it. Let's hear it.
Well, I can say I read it.
As you can see by the faces of Michael Hastings' colleagues, Hastings was a mainstream media journalist who refused to play ball with the political establishment. This video footage is from the morning of June 18th, 2013. The driver of the car was 33-year-old journalist Michael Hastings.
Are the guys inside?
I don't know. We don't know yet. Hopefully not.
But like,
hopefully not.
The car like this.
Did you hear it?
Yeah.
Did you see it?
Santa Monica, yeah.
You saw it?
Yeah. They buy the donuts in the toilet.
What? You saw the crash, or you saw him going fast?
And I understand a little bit English.
Okay, what did you see?
But he coming like 20, 100, all the car. He coming fast, a lot of fast.
So did you see him hit the tree?
And the floor they were coming to the highland like that, the floor.
And then what did you see?
No, I don't know. See the inside, the people side, but I see only the car, but too much fire, and then when I keep coming the things and like this.
Did you see anybody get out of the car?
No, I know.
The LAPD was quick to rule out foul play in the death of Michael Hastings. And according to the autopsy report, toxicology shows a small amount of amphetamine in the blood, consistent with possible intake of methamphetamine many hours before death, unlikely to have an intoxicative effect at the time of the accident. Marijuana was present in the blood, but mostly in the form of its metabolite, indicating intake hours earlier. All other drugs were negative.
The things that we talked about last week, it created quite a response, was the Hastings death in Los Angeles. And there is new information with regards to that story, correct?
Yes, there is.
What have you learned? And I know you talked to some family members, did you not?
I spoke with some very close friends of the family.
Okay.
I think the most concerning thing that I heard, and again, I just want to say I have not confirmed this with Michael Hastings' wife, but a close family friend did confirm that Michael's body was sent home in an urn, meaning he was cremated. And it wasn't the request of the family that went forward and asked for something like that. In fact, the family wanted Michael's body to go home. And for a coroner to go out and do an autopsy and then send a body home in an urn is shocking for a couple of reasons. If there was any evidence in his, body at the time of death,
drugs,
anything, that's gone. That evidence is now all gone. And so...
And by the way, Mr. Hastings hadn't had a drink in about 5 years.
5 years.
Okay.
So
according to him.
According to his family members.
To his family.
5 years. It had been 5 years. He'd given up drinking and he partaked in a little bit of a drug.
This is the journalist that was killed in a crash in Los Angeles. He had come out with the article in Rolling Stone magazine about Stanley McChrystal in 2010. And he was working on another big story, we believe, about General Petraeus.
Possibly NSA, CIA. Mm-hmm. We're not for certain. Now the folks that I'm talking to have said that he spoke with an attorney, and the attorney that he spoke with has all of the information on the story he was working on, and he did not even want to tell his wife about this because he said he wanted to protect her from knowing anything, so if anything were to happen to him, nothing could happen to her.
It's unclear what Hastings' big story was on, but there have been speculations that it concerned the military, more specifically retired General David Petraeus, and the privacy lawsuit filed by socialite Jill Kelly. According to Brian Bennett with the Los Angeles Times, Hastings was scheduled to meet with Kelly in the coming weeks to discuss the case, which alleges military officials and the FBI leaked her name to media after she reported receiving emails traced to Paula Broadwell, General Petraeus' biographer and mistress.
But for the first time, we're going to hear now from his widow, Elise Jordan, who joins me exclusively. Elise, good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
You've been a regular on the show as well as Michael. Incredibly sad, incredibly tragic. How are you, first of all?
Just taking it day by day. I was blessed to have the time with him that I had, so I feel very lucky for that, and just taking it day by day.
There have been, as there always are in these situations, wild conspiracy theories that he was chasing some hot story, maybe connected to that, his late-night car crash in Los Angeles. Other theories too. Do you subscribe to any of this? Do you have any idea really what may have happened?
I have no doubt that he was pursuing a hot story. He always had at least 5 hot stories going. That was Michael. So, and he also there will be published his profile of John Brennan in an upcoming issue of Rolling Stone.
It is still unclear exactly what Michael Hastings was investigating at the time of his death, but his wife has confirmed that at the very least, Hastings was looking into then CIA Director John Brennan. The accidental death of Michael Hastings would become the suspected murder of Michael Hastings when Hastings' friend would release an email sent by Hastings shortly before his death.
Hours before dying in a fiery car crash, award-winning journalist Michael Hastings sent an email to his colleagues, warning of a federal investigation and that he was, quote, going off the radar. The email, sent to KTLA by his friend, reads, "The feds are interviewing my close friends and associates. May be wise to immediately request legal counsel before any conversations or interviews about our news gathering practices. I'm on to a big story and need to go off the radar for a bit. All the best and hope to see you soon, Michael." The email was sent around 1 p.m. Monday, June 17th. At 4:20 a.m. the following morning, Hastings died when his Mercedes, traveling at high speeds, smashed into a tree and caught on fire. He was 33.
The FBI originally denied any ongoing investigation into Michael Hastings leading up to the time of his death.
And in a rare move, the FBI addressed the investigation claims, issuing a statement denying that Hastings was ever under investigation.
However, the FBI would backtrack and eventually admit that they were investigating Michael Hastings' reporting, not Michael Hastings himself.
Then yesterday, we learned that hours before his death, Hastings sent a cryptic email to his friends and associates saying that the feds were investigating him and that he was on to a big story. Sergeant Joe Biggs is one of the friends who received that chilling email, and he joins us live. Sergeant, thank you for being here and thank you for your service. So you knew Michael Hastings, and I know that this raised alarm bells for you when you heard that he was killed. Why do you question whether this was truly an accident?
It's the fact, the way that other times that we've spoken before, and this email I got, it was just very panicked, and it didn't seem like something normally we would talk about. And I just felt a gut feeling, something didn't feel right.
Mm-hmm. But the police say it's an accident. They looked into it. They said, look, he was driving fast. It was 4:30 in the morning. It was dark. Lost control of the car, went through a red light, hit a tree.
Well, his friends and family that know him, everyone says he drives like a grandma. So that right there doesn't seem like something that he would be doing. I mean, he had a lot of friends and family that cared about him. He had a good life to live. There's no way he would be acting erratic like that and driving that out of control.
What do you think is going on here? I mean, because we talked about this a couple of times just because it's getting so much attention on the internet, and people who are close to Mr. Hastings are still raising questions about the LAPD and their conclusions that this was an accident. What is the alternate theory, that he was murdered, that he was intentionally targeted by someone?
I don't know that. I just know that from the email to hours later dying, it's just not a coincidence like that. Things don't add up. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered. I contacted by email Mercedes today, asked them if it's normal for their cars to blow up to that extent, for if the engines fly out on a normal basis. I mean, these are the real questions we need to ask.
And what of the, I mean, obviously he was investigating a couple of high-profile cases. He was looking into, he said, Jill Kelly, who was connected with the whole David Petraeus and General Clark. Go ahead.
His wife today said that that's definitely not true, that he was investigating into Jill Kelly.
Michael Hastings' wife says he was not investigating that.
Yes.
Okay. Well, what was he investigating, as far as you know, that would have caused any consternation whatsoever by someone?
CIA, but from what he said, or his last, one of the things he said is it was going to be the biggest story yet.
And then another bombshell. Wikileaks indicated that Hastings had reached out to the publishing organization.
And conspiracy theories have been circulating, fueled in part by a series of WikiLeaks tweets alleging Hastings contacted WikiLeaks lawyer Jennifer Robinson a few hours prior to his crash about an FBI investigation.
It appears that Michael Hastings had reached out to WikiLeaks the day prior to his untimely death. The same day that he sent a panicked email to colleague and friend Sergeant Joe Biggs indicating that the government was watching him. And then, just a few days after his death, Richard Clark, the former U.S. National Coordinator for Security, Infrastructure Protection, and Counterterrorism, would drop another bombshell in an interview with the Huffington Post. Clark indicated that the Hastings crash had all the hallmarks of a cyber attack. Richard Clark told the Huffington Post that what is known about the single vehicle crash is consistent with a car cyber attack. There is reason to believe that intelligence agencies from major powers, including the United States, know how to remotely seize control of a car. So if there were a cyber attack on the car, I'm not saying that there was. I think whoever did it would probably get away with it. The revelations by Clark sparked debate as to whether the CIA can hack into cars and carry out undetectable assassinations. As far back as 2011, the New York Times reported that they could. We would get clarity on the CIA's hacking capabilities in 2017 with the WikiLeaks release of Vault 7.
Vault 7, which WikiLeaks says is just the first part in what will be a series of CIA leaks, consists of 7,818 web pages with 943 attachments. So there's an endless amount of information here. I've done my best to narrow down the initial findings to 3 main pieces of information, which perhaps are the most informative at this moment, though information will continue to trickle out in coming days. So what do we know as a result of these leaks? Here's the first bit of info. The CIA has the capacity to hack smart devices. This may not be entirely shocking, considering we have reported on the vulnerabilities of these devices before. However, Vault 7 tells us exactly what the CIA specifically has the ability to do. We also know now the applications previously thought of as encrypted, like, for example, the Signal app NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden encouraged privacy-conscious citizens to use, can still be accessed by the spying agency. Finally, we also see in these leaks the CIA's embedded device branch was investigating in 2014 how to apply its hacking techniques to vehicle systems, which would include remote access.
WikiLeaks Vault 7, CIA hacking tools revealed. As of October 2014, the CIA was looking at infecting the vehicle control systems used by modern cars and trucks. The purpose of such control is not specified, but it would permit the CIA to engage in nearly undetectable assassinations.
The slide that's been omitted showed a result of the researchers at UCSD and the University of Washington hacking into the dashboard display of a typical American sedan, making it show that the car was going 140 miles an hour while in park. Drilling down a little bit, modern vehicles consist of between 30 and 100 embedded control units, which are essentially small computers connected via a CAN bus. These cars are required by law to have a diagnostic port, typically located under the steering wheel, that allows mechanics to download diagnostic information and to perform software updates. In a first paper, the researchers from UCSD and the University of Washington showed that if they could touch the CAN bus through that diagnostic port, they could take over all of the functionality of the car that's controlled by software. And in a modern automobile, that's pretty much everything. The brakes are controlled by software because of anti-lock braking. The acceleration is controlled by software because of cruise control. And in those fancy new cars that can park themselves, even the steering is under software control. The reaction to this first paper was somewhat muted, perhaps because if the researchers had access to that diagnostic port, they were inside the car, and so already had physical access to the brakes, acceleration, and steering. They responded with a second paper in which they showed a variety of ways of touching that CAN bus without physically touching the car. These attacks involved infecting the computers in the repair shop and then having that infection spread to the car through the diagnostic port, or hacking in through the Bluetooth system, or using the cell phone network to break in through the telematics unit that's normally used to provide roadside assistance. The most ingenious attack, though, used the stereo system in the car. The researchers were able to craft an electronic version of a song that played just fine in your home stereo system or on your personal computer. But when you put that on a CD and played it in the car CD player, it took over total control of your automobile. Yeah, right. Pretty scary, huh?
Michael Hastings was a rare breath of fresh air. A mainstream media journalist who wasn't afraid to speak truth to power. Who bypassed the opportunity to be a well-paid talking head for the politically connected class and instead chose to speak truth to power and stand up for what's right, to stand up against injustice, against the military-industrial complex. Don't remain silent about the injustice that took place toward Michael Hastings, because he wouldn't remain silent if injustice took place toward you. The truth is, people like Michael Hastings, people like Seth Rich, they live through the courage of the people that are still here, that are willing to honor their memory by standing up against injustice, by standing up against their murderers. I'm willing to stand up against injustice. Are you? Thank you so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate your support. Please like, comment, let me know what you think about this video. If you're interested in contributing to FFR News, go to www.patreon.com/FFRnews. As little as $1 monthly makes all the difference in the world to me. You also get access to exclusive Patreon-only videos. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.